Hope your week is off to a good start. I'm Min Sun-hee with our panel of foreign journalists. Welcome to the show.
Great to be back again. Thanks.
The government has unveiled a comprehensive 5-year roadmap, including 100 specific policy initiatives. We have details in our first report. On July 19th, an announcement of the 100 policy initiatives was made at Gwanghwamun. On this occasion, the National Planning and Advisory Committee announced the 5-year policy roadmap. Through the 5-year plan, the Moon Jae-in government plans to promote Korea into a nation of the people and of justice.
국민이 주인으로 대접받는 국민의 나라. 모든 특권과 반칙, 불공정을 일소하고 차별과 격차를 해소하는 정의로운 대한민국을 만들겠습니다.
5 main policy objectives have been set up, which in turn have been broken down into 20 strategies, and these strategies into 100 policy tasks. Aside from the 100 policy tasks, 4 major projects will be pursued first, including that related to employment, innovative entrepreneurship, low birth rate, and balanced regional development.
500차례가 넘는 보고와 회의를 통해서 어떻게 국민 열망을 잘 받들 것인지 고민했고 빈틈없이 국정과제를 정리했습니다.
The 100 policy tasks come as part of President Moon's campaign pledges and includes some 150,000 proposals from the members of the public through the Gwanghwamun First Street.
특별히 이번 국정과제를 선정하는 과정은 정부가 주도하던 과거의 관행에서 탈피하여 최초로 국민 참여형으로 이루어졌습니다. 매우 뜻깊게 생각합니다.
There is much to be done to implement the 100 policy initiatives. The first problem is raising the budget. A budget of 178 trillion won is needed to implement the comprehensive plan. Because of this, controversy over raising taxes is high. However, President Moon Jae-in has underscored that low and middle-class citizens and small and medium-sized businesses will not be affected, as the tax hike will only affect the super high income bracket and top conglomerates. The new policy agenda proposed by the Moon Jae-in government is garnering much attention, as many wait to see the path it seeks to pave. So what are some of the more remarkable policy initiatives in your opinion, Elise?
Well, I don't know that this is remarkable, but Moon Jae-in has a lot of pressure on him to help improve the state of the middle class here in South Korea. And so a lot of the 100-point plan really had to do with raising tax revenue in order to pay for more government support or government subsidy to help middle-class people get lifted up and get more jobs and help young people become employed. So he was really largely elected on a lot of these jobs and kitchen table issues. And so he has to deliver. And so I really wasn't surprised that he came out with a plan that was so heavily focused on finding ways to improve the overall economy.
Do you think it's feasible, this 100 policy initiatives, like you said, over a span of 5 years?
Well, I don't think it's designed really to succeed in completing all of that span. I think it serves maybe a couple of purposes. One of the purposes is to maybe galvanize the bureaucracy, to say to the bureaucracy, look, we have a plan, this is it. It's very concrete, it's something that they can identify with, and also something that the public can identify with. And they can look at the government and say, look, our government is trying to do something. They are forwarding a very solid plan to sort of turn around, as Elise mentioned, the economy for the middle class and for young people in South Korea, and also engage a different policy toward North Korea.
Mm-hmm. There was also a lot of attention on the atmosphere of the actual announcement at Gwanghwamun. It was a no-tie affair. Participants used the wireless microphones. Lack of visible cue cards. The atmosphere in general was rather relaxed less intimidating, if I may. What were your thoughts, Frank?
I think that sort of keeps within the idea of him reaching out to the public. It's making government more accessible, and again, with previous leadership being somewhat aloof and somewhat separated from the public, this demonstrates just the opposite, how he seeks to identify with ordinary South Koreans, and that he wants the government to identify with the needs of ordinary South Koreans. And through, informalizing this event, I think he accomplishes that.
Out of the 100 policy initiatives, what do you believe should be touched upon immediately? For example, there was talk about efforts to deal with air pollution as well.
Yes, I mean, air pollution, obviously, for a lot of us foreigners is a top concern, but it should also be a concern for government, especially here because of the health costs that are then lagging as a result of air pollution. So there's all these studies now that show in China and India, the government's having to field far higher healthcare costs, especially at the end of life, and for small people, for toddlers and children and babies, because of the bad air and the air they're breathing and the respiratory effects of it. So if you want to alleviate the burden of sort of social and health costs, but then also prevent a lot of these things from happening down the road, I think it would be an easy fix, especially given the results of the recent NASA study that show that more than 50% of the pollution here in South Korea is local, it's homegrown. And so that's actually hopeful, right? That's a good thing in that it means that South Korea can do something about it and not just say, oh, well, this is a problem we can't control. No, there is a lot of things that this government can do, and hopefully we'll do something.
Frank, in your opinion, what is an imperative? What's an issue of urgency that we need to deal with straight off?
Well, I think that he's already shown, like even prior to the 100-point list, he's already demonstrated the issues that are included in that he intends to really work on. Of course, the economy figures high up there. Anti-corruption also figures high up there, and North Korea figures high up there. He's already been working on those. In terms of the environment, he's shut down, I think, a couple of coal power plants and sort of reversed course on what they're going to do with nuclear energy a little bit. One of the encouraging things I feel about the energy policy is that the government hasn't really just made a sudden decision overall, and they're going to be studying what to do about the environment and what to do about the nuclear power initiatives that were put in place by previous administrations. For the government to just suddenly make a decision without having a consensus and scientific sort of evaluation of what is the best thing, I think would be wrong. And I'm encouraged by what I see from the administration in terms of that.
From what you've seen so far, what do you believe would be a stark difference between this new administration and the past administration in terms of dealing with state affairs?
A lot of that has already borne out, right? In just Moon Jae-in's first couple of weeks as president, he did a lot of things to show how approachable he was. And so I think the answer to that is not only just a more relaxed and laid-back tone, but also the effects of that is supposed to signal to the rest of the audience, to the citizenry, that listen, government works for you. We are actually your servants. You elected us. You pay us. And we're here to not only hear your concerns, but also try and address those concerns. And so just changing that balance of power a little bit to where it's not so Confucian. It's not so, hey, we're the elites and everything's going to be kind of flowing down from us and top down. I think that's a positive change when it comes to state affairs.
And it flows from the slogan that they've given, a just Korea. So he's really trying to separate himself from the previous administration as much as possible, and I think that's a good thing. Looking back at the policies of Park Geun-hye, you have trust politic toward North Korea, and I think that was really kind of a disingenuous policy toward North Korea, not really how she felt. I mean, I think her administration took quite a hardline policy toward North Korea, shut down the Kaesong industrial complex sort of as soon as practicable, and then instituted a hard line toward Pyongyang that wasn't really successful in reducing tension on the Korean Peninsula at all. And then looking at her domestic policy, it was economic democratization. I don't think facilitating the enrichment of a close friend through the extortion of the country's companies represents economic democratization. So Moon Jae-in's plan to distance himself as far as he can from the previous administration is definitely a good plan. Hopefully he'll flush out more comprehensive and self-owned policies, maybe through this 100-point plan.
If you were able to, or if you were assigned to cover the 100 policy agenda, Elise, what would be the focus of your coverage?
I think definitely the economy, just because this is what affects the most people in South Korea in the short term. Obviously, I think air affects everybody in the long term. But the questions about lifting up the middle class and getting more people employed are always at the top of mind of voters, and so that's really important. How to break up the chaebol, or not break them up, but reduce their influence so that more small and medium-sized enterprises can better compete in this economy is a question for the future of South Korea's economy, and so that is wrapped up in all of this. And then also wrapped up in jobs and the economy is equality for women. I've brought up numerous times on this program how gendered this society feels. And one thing that can really empower an economy is if half the population was empowered to work. And so how that is engineered by the government, to the extent the government has a role in it, is a huge question, and I would want to look deeper into that.
I'd be looking at a couple of things. The main one I'd be looking at is the economics of it. Looking at 810,000 new employees, that's going to cost something like $25 billion per year. That's an ongoing expense, not a one-off shot of the 100-point plan. So I'd be looking at that, and then I'd also, of course, be looking at the corporate corruption and government collusion aspect of things that really got this ball rolling almost a year ago now with the whole Gwanghwamun Jae-in scandal. Are we going to see changes in the relationship between government and South Korea's large corporations? It's something that has been promised by the presidents of Korea for going on 2 decades, and yet this problem continues to crop up. So, you know, initial indications are that Moon Jae-in's appointed something like an attack dog to his position to look at that corporate corruption issue, and it'll be interesting to see if that attack dog has the effect of eliminating that sort of corporate and government collusion.
And going back, Frank, to what you mentioned earlier about the budget, so to put this new plan into action, the government needs 178 trillion won. That's about 158 billion US dollars. There's talk that more than half of that amount will come from readjusting government expenditure, and that 46%, I believe, will come from hikes in taxes. Now, the government has said that the tax hike will be targeted at super rich, but this speculation is already fueling some skepticism. How do you respond to this, Elise?
Well, you know, people don't want to pay greater taxes typically, and in the US, the Republicans have run on trying to reduce taxes and regulations for 20 or 30 years and continue to win on that very promise. And so I get it. But however, if you are going to try and lift up the middle class and employ people with government jobs or government subsidization of jobs, then it does require that that government somehow raise revenue in order to pay for it. The plan, as I understand, and this isn't specifically laid out yet, right, by the Moon Jae-in administration, would be to raise just a couple of percentage points on the corporate tax rate for a lot of the big companies. I don't have a problem philosophically with corporations paying a greater share. They make tons of money, right? And this is considered a progressive tax scheme, which is, you know, the people on the richer end up paying a greater share than a regressive tax scheme in which, you know, lower end people pay a greater percentage of their income. And so I'm okay with progressive tax schemes personally, philosophically. The question is whether this is going to lead to political revolt, right? Because the Moon Jae-in's party, the Democratic Party or the Minju Party, doesn't have that many more seats in the National Assembly. And so this could be politically fraught for him, especially if the conservative parties really run on this, like, oh, South Korea is overtaxed or corporations are paying too much of a percentage of their profits.
Yes, I agree with what Elise said, that increasing taxes on corporations and South Korea's wealthy is you know, acceptable. in order to achieve the goals of narrowing the gap between the rich and poor in South Korea that we've seen really widen over the last decade of conservative rule here. They would argue that if you tax us more, then we're not going to be able to invest in as much, and it will affect, employment in South Korea. It's the same argument that's been made about the minimum wage here, the increase, a 16% increase coming in 2018 in South Korea's minimum wage, and you have small and medium-sized businesses saying, look, if you do that, then we're going to cut back on our hours, we're going to cut back on our labor, it's going to cost jobs. There's always that argument. But I think taxing corporations and the wealthy in South Korea is something that's necessary in order to raise the budget for these other initiatives that I find kind of important.
Among the priorities of the new administration that related to rooting out corruption to ensure a just and fair society for the people has been placed at the top. We have details in our second report. The 5-year policy roadmap sets out specific action plans to better ensure national growth. The 5-year plan is divided into 5 goals to build a nation where the people are the owners and an economy that allows prosperity for all, among others. The first and most important task of the 100 policy plan is anti-corruption. President Moon Jae-in spoke of the reform of political power and authority, anti-corruption and chaebol reform in his campaign pledges. Even after the establishment of the Moon Jae-in administration, the problem of deep-rooted corruption has been touched upon several times.
적폐청산과 국민통합이라고 하는 것이 잘못 들으면 상충하는 것처럼 들릴 수가 있습니다. 그러나 그것은 상충하는 것이 아니고 두 가지가 함께 가야 할 과제라고 생각합니다. 그 두 가지를 함께 가도록 지혜롭게 임하겠습니다.
The new administration will seek to investigate government monopolization, retrieve Choi Soon-sil's illegal assets, find facts related to cultural blacklists and prevent such occurrences through complete eradication of corruption. Meanwhile, anti-corruption reforms and resolution of past problems have emerged as the second and third tasks of the 100-point plan. The administration's desire to eradicate corruption is also the desire of many people. According to a recent survey conducted by a news agency, 3 out of 4 respondents said they support the government's policy on anti-corruption. Many are hoping for a more transparent Korea through the 100 policy agenda. So corruption has been placed at the top of the list of the 100 policy initiatives. Why do you suppose this has been placed there?
Well, that's where it belongs. I mean, looking at the months of demonstrations, I went out, I must have seen 2 million people all together over the course of several months demonstrating out at Gwanghwamun Square. So that's, the reason that this government exists and got into power is behind a desire to clean up the relationship between government and large corporations in South Korea and put an end to the corruption that exists there. So that's where it belongs, at the top of that list. I don't want to see the government become obsessed with that one initiative because there are a lot of other things that I think need to be tackled here, and it looks like with the 100-day plan, Moon Jae-in might be trying to do that.
What role can the media play to ensure an effective eradication of corruption?
I think that the media have a huge responsibility when it comes to just watchdogging and calling out and holding accountable a lot of these top institutions, whether it be schools or businesses or government themselves. I'm surprised that the Choi Soon-sil scandal took so long to break after there was so much smoke about this relationship, even back during the Park Geun-hye campaign when she was running for president in 2012. And yet, this whole story didn't break until she was almost done with her administration. I think that's a problem, that shows that the media could be more investigative, could be a stronger watchdog, muckrake, as the term goes, muckrake more in order to help root out some of the darker or elements of society.
Sure, I'd like to see the media do a better job too. I really wish that there was more money for investigative journalism. It's one of the areas in journalism that's kind of seen reduced funding as, media companies struggle to continue to make a living in the internet age and just produce sort of clickbait news. So it is encouraging to see some investigative journalism take place, as we saw with the Jae-in scandal. But I think we need to look at what really uncovered that initially, and it was students at Ewha University that said to the public and said to the media that they weren't going to take it anymore. And I think you saw the public drive the media to investigate further. Certainly JTBC did an excellent job in their investigation of the whole Gwanghwamun Jae-in scandal, but I believe that there was kind of a cycle, a virtuous cycle taking place between the demonstrators and activists and students and public driving the media to investigate, and then those investigations uncovering more corruption and more information that then the prosecution and the state, legal authorities had to look into. And I think really, curiously, it was driven again, initially by those students. I think that was great. I'd like to see more South Koreans maybe rise up in the future should the same type of thing happen again and say that they're not going to take it anymore and force journalists to do their job.
Right. There is also concern that the well-intentioned efforts to eliminate corruption may, in due course, pave the path to possible political retaliation. How do you respond to these concerns?
I think that's what you're seeing now. I think that's one of the concerns that I mentioned earlier, that the Moon Jae-in is maybe going a little bit hard after people in the Gwanghwamun administration or that are in the conservative bloc, in the political sphere of the conservative bloc, rather than concentrating on his 100 points and serving the people. And if he does that too hard, then when you see a conservative government in the future, the same thing's going to happen, and they're going to be encouraging the prosecution to chase down all the different things that they did against the law. For example, I'll give you an example here. They uncovered a document at the Blue House recently that was, incriminating of somebody in the Gwanghwamun administration. And a Blue House official held up that document in front of a news conference. Now, I would rather, when the Blue House found that document, to phone the prosecution and say, there's a document there. Do what you want with it, rather than use it for this political drama to gain political points with the public. I hope that type of behavior actually backfires.
What are your thoughts, Elise?
Just on how to reduce the political backlash, I would say it's natural, right? This is kind of something that happens when one party is in power and the other one isn't. The opposition party is going to organize around what they're opposed to. And so the best thing that the people in power can do is to show results, to be outcome oriented, and deliver on the priorities that the public have outlined as their concerns. So again, this goes back to helping people get employed and feel like they're contributing to society and being able to feed their families and make their own aspirations come true. And so to the extent that the government can focus on that rather than infighting and process battles with the opponents, which often happens in the legislature here, as you know. So to the extent that the government can focus on outcomes and results, I think that's going to be what helps get them elected again and again.
And in your opinion, what could we Koreans do to ensure a successful implementation of the 100 policy agenda? Elise, we'll start with you.
Be informed and educated citizens. And I think knowing about what you're voting on, knowing the issues that are occupying your leadership and lawmakers is really important, because then you can do something about it. You can try to lobby them. You can try to sort of raise more awareness about things that you care about. And so just having an informed and engaged public is really critical to a democracy.
I think South Korea demonstrated its interest in an informed public and in public participation in governance last fall with all those demonstrations. I think the only thing they need to be reminded is that defending democracy is an ongoing process. So they need to keep their eye on the ball, even though, let's say, their man is now in the Blue House. They need to keep an eye on the government to make sure that they follow through on their pledges.
Right. Well, today we met, minus one other journalist, the two of you, and including myself. We talked about the government's new policy agenda for the next 5 years. What, in your opinion, did you think about the discussion today, Elise?
I like how hopeful it is and how forward sounding this whole conversation is, because it's about what Korea looks like a couple years from now and 5-10 years from now if these policies then have a long effect. And I think that's great. So long as we can try and improve things and make this place a better place to live for its citizens, I think that's a good thing.
Well, I thought I was going to be a lot more critical when I came on today. I was talking to the producer saying how I was going to be, very negative about the 100-point plan of Moon Jae-in, but it turned out, like Elise said, to be quite a positive discussion. As journalists, it's kind of different. I mean, I'm used to seeing the glass half empty, or actually full of polluted water and polluted air, and it's nice to have some time where I'm a little bit more optimistic.
Right. The new policy guidelines seek to create what President Moon Jae-in earlier described, a nation worthy of being called a nation. Thank you for watching.